Zach LaVine is reportedly on the list of players that the Denver Nuggets are interested in eyeing at acquiring before the trade deadline. Will that deal make sense for the Chicago Bulls? We're going to talk about all that plus more on today's Locked On Bulls.
You are Locked On Bulls, your daily Chicago Bulls podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in to Locked On Bulls, member of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. I'm Haize, host and creator of Chicago Bulls Central and Chicago Bears Central YouTube pages and podcasts. And today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. With that said, let's get into it. This is probably about as close to breaking news you're going to get on Locked On Bulls unless something breaks as we're recording live. And that is, this just came out from The Athletic and the New York Times and Sam Amick. And Richie reported that the Denver Nuggets are eyeing a Zach LaVine trade leading into the trade deadline as they look to add to their team. Now, Zach LaVine is one of the players mentioned in this article. I want to be clear there. And considering the fact that Zach LaVine does have that 15% trade kicker as well, which is something I didn't think about initially when I talked about that over on Chicago Bulls Central, is that it could make this trade a little bit difficult to facilitate. But the Denver Nuggets have a great chip to start this off with that gets you pretty close of the way of trading for Zach LaVine, and that is Michael Porter Jr. Now, keep in mind, this is a player that wanted to be drafted initially by the Chicago Bulls. He made his desire to be a Chicago Bull leading into that draft very obvious when it all got said and done in that. But the Bulls ended up going a different way. I believe that was the draft we drafted Wendell Carter, if I'm not mistaken, in that draft. I could be off on the years there. But Michael Porter Jr. with his $35 million contract, $35.8 million, will get the Denver Nuggets most of the way there. They would have to include another player, maybe a Zeke Naji as a player that they could include there, to kind of make everything match. And then the Bulls, because they have to match players because you don't have an open roster spot, could include a vet minimum contract like Torrey Craig in that type of deal, which, considering that the Denver Nuggets also want and are looking for some bench depth, could actually make some sense for that team as well. Now, I want to be clear here. In no way is this a deal that's been talked about as something that's pertinent or that could be happening any day now. It's just that the Nuggets have Zach LaVine on their list of one of the players that they could acquire. Now, this is Chicago, right? And it could very well turn out to be that the Denver Nuggets end up targeting a player that has a less of a contract hit than Zach LaVine. So I want to be clear that I don't want to set the expectation that this is a trade that's on the precipice of happening or anything, because it's not. But it is something that, it's kind of good to hear, right? For those that, want to see Zach LaVine moved, or the fact that, just the Bulls, if they're focused on trying to move Zach LaVine at the trade deadline. And this is honestly probably one of the better situations that Zach LaVine is going to find. No, it's not an LA team, which you all know that we've heard that Zach LaVine covets, but it would be sending him to a team with a clear superstar, MVP caliber player, and a team that does have its eyes set to actually win something meaningful. And with adding Zach LaVine there, adding him to Aaron Gordon, adding him to Russell Westbrook, adding him to Jamal Murray, adding Torrey Craig to that as well, because I do think that they probably would want Torrey Craig as well. Maybe there's business to be done between the two teams here. Now, it depends on how you look at it. I know a lot of Bulls fans are going to look at Michael Porter Jr. and say, well, what does this really gain the Bulls? And outside of some cap flexibility that it helps with, the Denver Nuggets also could offer a first-round pick in this trade as well. And they would have to get creative if they want it to be a first-round pick before 2031, because they do have protections on some of their picks leading into that. But they could write the language in that trade that they could acquire the first pick that becomes available, right? That's how they could write it. And then the Bulls could get a pick sooner rather than later in that case. But, this is probably the most significant trade interest that we've heard from in Zach LaVine in quite a while, right? And this would be a trade that doesn't theoretically force the Bulls to give up any picks themselves. And so it'd be really interesting to see what if this comes to fruition, and if these two teams do actually engage in trade talks, and where does that lead the respective teams in their pursuit of whatever they want to get. I'm not saying that this is the perfect trade for Zach LaVine, because it isn't. This is a trade that's going to universally make everybody happy, because it isn't. This isn't a trade that somehow makes the Bulls better, because it doesn't. It doesn't necessarily make the Bulls much worse either. I do think Zach LaVine is a better player than Michael Porter Jr., but it would make the roster make a little bit more sense when you look at the size thing, when you look at needing some actual forwards here. And, it's something that the Bulls could look to explore. Again, not a perfect trade, but it is something that they could look to explore. Jive Turkey says, get it done. Dan in it says, what is the trade proposal giving up LaVine? First pick from Portland and 2 second picks we got from what? No, the Bulls wouldn't be giving up any picks in this trade. Why are you trying to make the Bulls worse? To be clear, what does Zach LaVine trade kicker say? It's a 15% trade kicker, meaning that it's pretty straightforward. If you trade him, it's a 15% kicker that the Bulls have to absorb. Now, I don't know how that works as far as the trade. Does the other team have to match the salary of the trade kicker? Because the Bulls have to pay the trade kicker. Is it a one-time payment, or does it make his 15% contract more? His contract 15% more year after year? That part I don't know. But it is a 15% trade kicker that the Bulls would have to foot the bill on. So take that for what you will. It's time to finally move on. I mean, listen, there's no guarantee that this trade goes down. Sam Amick is somebody that I believe when he says something, it is something that he's heard. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to go down, right? And that's why I like to point out the fact that in this article, it does point out that Zach LaVine is one of the players that the Denver Nuggets have on their board, basically. And so, not a lot of teams, we haven't heard a lot that teams have it. If anything, recent over the last week, all we've heard is that there's no real significant trade interest in Zach LaVine. So this is the first time that we've heard during this cycle that a team could really be interested in this for Zach LaVine. And we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens when it comes down to that. Like, this is, again, not a great trade, right? It's not one of those trades that you look at and you say, the Bulls hit a home run on the Zach LaVine trade. But it does reset the deck with a younger player. The timeline kind of fits. It saves you a little bit money in the long term as well. And it makes your roster make a little bit more sense. And, that's really what it would accomplish. If you do get a first-round pick in it, you do get another draft asset. I'm sure the Denver Nuggets will want to add some protections to that. But it gets you something in that time. It gets you something in that time. Can't hurt to know another team may have interest in Zach. Exactly. Can't hurt the market. It can't, and as we get closer to the trade deadline, all it takes is a team to get desperate, right? All it takes is for a team to look at their roster and say, we need to improve here. And this offers us the best situation to do it, right? Who else could you see the Nuggets moving on from to match the salary with Zach LaVine? I kind of said it. I think that, they pointed it out good over on Central. Zeke Naji makes a lot of sense. Dario Saric could be another player who hasn't really played pretty well for that team. When you look at the contract demands, that's really it, right? Because they're not going to include Russ, even that he's only $3.3 million. So it really comes down to that combination for real. That's what it comes down to. Y'all speculating that is to get off LaVine contract, but actually MPJ is AK's final piece to win the champion. Come on now, Camille. Let's come on. What are we doing here? What are we doing? I can't say what I want to say because this is locked on, but what are we doing? To win a championship in Chicago? Come on, man. What's the likelihood you think Denver pulls the trigger? MC season, that's a great question. And here's the thing. I think that before acquiring a $45 million contract, they're going to explore every single avenue. And that's not even necessarily against Zach as a player. That's just when you look at the restrictions of the second tax apron nowadays, teams are going to really try to explore every option possible to improve their team without adding a salary that large to what they already have. And that's something that the Nuggets are going to have to look at. When you look at the Nuggets salary cap right now, they are $5 million below the second tax apron. So technically, and $7 million next year. So they'll still be right up against that second tax apron. They can make some wiggle room to still stay below it, but that's the thing that they probably have to navigate. And if they feel like Zach LaVine is enough, that for them to risk being that skin close to the second tax apron and maybe not have as much flexibility to add a mid-level exception player or something next year, then they may be willing to do it. And that may be why they want to include a player like Torrey Craig in there. Maybe they do try to seek a younger player as well. But, that's something that they really have to look at as well in that case. And we'll see what comes down to it. Najee, Strother, and MPJ for LaVine and Corey. That's the thing, though. We can't take 3 players back. We don't have an open roster spot. So the Bulls would have to send a 3rd player back. And even sending somebody like Chris Duarte, Strother's contract isn't large enough to negate that gap. So I don't think, and especially if they're right up against the tax, the cap, the second tax apron, they may want to keep a young player like Julian Strother, but we'll see there. But we're gonna continue talking about this, and we're gonna get into an article that was posted by Will Gottlieb called the NBA Purgatory Rankings, in which the Bulls were ranked at number 1, tied with the Detroit Pistons. But before we get into that, we got to get into a message from a few of our sponsors. All right, Bulls fans, man, I got to talk to you guys about one of our sponsors here, and that is Game Time. Game Time is focused on togetherness this holiday season. That means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better. It's the perfect gift. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Plus, the Game Time Picks curation makes it easy to save more on sports, comedy, theater, and more. Plus, if you toggle the all-in pricing on, the feature shows you the total upfront, so you get no surprise fees at checkouts. And I know it's holiday time, and some of y'all are broke. Y'all don't need some surprise fees. Plus, you can get a panoramic view of your seat before you even purchase your ticket. Game Time also has the lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal, Game Time will credit you the 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered by the best and most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code, that's LOCKEDONNBA, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Also got to talk to you guys about another one of our sponsors, and that is Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely has happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for. And Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is my personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together all in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and have saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker that I've used to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA today. That's rocketmoney.com/LockedOn. rocketmoney.com/LockedOn. More Locked On Bulls coming up next. All right, my Bulls fans, thank you guys for sitting through this with me. It's an exciting time around, to hear that Zach LaVine may have some trade interest. You know, the Bulls have been looking to move him actively for probably about the last year and a half to see if the Bulls are going to be able to do it. It's a good thing to talk about. What's not as good to talk about is the current state of the Chicago Bulls, which was all kind of brought together today by a post by Will the GOAT Gottlieb from CHGO, in which he pointed to analytic that was created called the NBA Purgatory Index. And what this index did, right? And it's a really interesting for those that just like numbers, which if you can't tell, I do. I just like numbers sometimes. It is what it is there. It tracks the number of either playoff wins or top 5 picks that a team has had, and it tracked it all the way since 2016. And in that time, since 2016, the Chicago Bulls have had a total of 4 combined top 5 draft selections and playoff wins since 2016. That means 3 playoff wins and 1 top 5 draft selection, which is Patrick Williams, right? And so that is an interesting thing, because when you look at the teams that the Bulls are around, the Detroit Pistons also have 4. The Charlotte Hornets have 3 playoff wins and 5 top 5 draft selections. The Sacramento Kings have 6 combined 3 playoff wins and 3 top 5. I'm sorry, and 3 top 5 draft selections, and then the Orlando Magic with 5 playoff wins and 2 top 5 draft selections. So, that is what it is, right? Now, what this does not take into consideration is how many of those top 5 draft picks actually hit, right? How many of those actually turned into players that were productive in the NBA? It doesn't look at the quality wins, right? Like how much did you fight above your stance or whatever in the playoffs? But it does gain an interesting thing to just highlight the fact that the Bulls right now are still stuck in the middle with no clear way to get out. And that's something that continually hurts this team, right? It hurts this team to really be in a place where you have no real forward lateral movement. This goes back to 2016. So this is even before Arturas took over the team, right? This is still some of the residuals left over from the Garpax era, right? And so the Bulls have really been on this treadmill of mediocrity for almost a decade, right? And the way to get out of it, it's not, and let me be clear, there's no one way is your clear way to get out of mediocrity, right? It's what affords you the best opportunity to get out of mediocrity. Of course, if you're able to trade for a proven superstar, that's probably better than getting a top 5 pick. If it's proven, you're able to sign in free agency a proven star. That's probably better than an unknown top 5 pick. But the Bulls, unfortunately, have never really been a trade destination, despite how good the team has had, players at times in the Derrick Rose era, even look at the Baby Bulls era that was consistently over 40 wins until the season before they got Derrick Rose. We never really been able to track that big name free agent, right? So that's kind of off the board for the Bulls. We've never been able to do it. The best free agent signings of Chicago Bulls history is probably what? Pau Gasol and DeMar DeRozan? Probably, right? I would love to hear who else you guys view. Jabari Parker definitely isn't that, right? So the Bulls haven't really had a lot of success on the free agent market. Then when you look at it in the draft, who's to say even that AK and Eversley would draft well, even if they got multiple top 5 picks? That adds a little bit even more concern when it comes down to it, right? That's more concern. And so the Bulls have to pick a path, right? And sometimes your path picks you. And in this case, right, the Bulls made their trades. They made their free agent signings to try to make this team a contender. That was Nikola Vucevic, Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, DeMar DeRozan, right? 2 of those players are still on this roster, and Lonzo Ball and Nikola Vucevic. 2 of them are still on this roster. And Lonzo's on this roster because he missed 2.5 years worth of basketball. Right? Out of the $80 million contract we gave Lonzo Ball for 4 years, we haven't even hit 50 games on that contract yet. That's a sad place to be in, right? And so when you look at the Bulls and their path to really try to get out of mediocrity, it seems like, right, unless they do something unexpected, unless a player develops and hits a ceiling that we didn't expect and becomes a star in front of our eyes, it seems like right now the best path forward for the Bulls would be to, in a deep draft in 2025, do everything in their disposal and in their power to try to keep that top 10 pick. It seems that way, right? And I'm leaving up a little bit of leeway there because, again, nothing's for sure. Nothing's certain. Nothing gives you that one thing that you can look at and say, this is a surefire way that we're going to be a contender anytime sooner. Even right now, it's not even about being contenders. It's about getting out the middle. The middle in is the worst place that you can be in sports because you're not, and even the Bulls have even made being in the middle worse because if we were in the middle in this draft and had our own pick outright, that we didn't have to worry about this staying in the top 10 of the draft to keep our pick, you could still walk away with a hell of a player. But unfortunately, due to the decisions that this front office has made and how they didn't future forecast, we now have given up or we could potentially give up a pick in the lottery in the deepest draft in the last handful of years to a team that's already drafted a generational player in Wemby. And we don't even have the player anymore on our roster that we traded the first round pick. DeMar is gone. That's what a front office that makes that mistakes come back to bite them in their ass. That's the type of place that it can put you. Because nobody would have foresaw that at the time when the Bulls traded for DeMar DeRozan, they did that sign-and trade for DeMar DeRozan. Nobody would have foresaw that the Bulls would be in this current place right now where DeMar is not even on the roster and we still may have to convey the pick. And that's what mediocrity gets you. And it's really unfortunate. It's really freaking unfortunate, but that's the place that we find ourselves in. But where will the Bulls find themselves in at the end of the month of December? We're going to finish this episode off talking about how the Bulls will finish the month of December. They got some tough games to finish off this month. But first, we got to get to a message from a couple of our sponsors. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I've been telling you guys, that's a huge leg up. All jokes aside, to be able to get all the information that you need to place an informed bet on the same page where you can place your bets, it just makes streamline the whole process for you. So for my people that get their hunch while they're watching the game to put in a bet, FanDuel gives you all the tools at your disposal on their website. You just got to go to FanDuel.com to join today. You get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Also got to talk to you guys about Built. Today's episode is sponsored by Built Rewards. If you're a renter, listen up. This is a total game changer. Thanks to Built, you can now earn points on rent payments, just like you do with groceries or travel. Paying rent now comes with serious perks and is completely free to join. Earn valuable Built points on your rent and everyday spending at no extra cost. You can redeem points for flights, hotel stays, and even future rent payments. With over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels in their program, the possibilities are truly endless. Access unique experiences that are exclusive to Built members. I love using points for travel, and Built makes it so easy to turn rent into rewards. If you're already paying rent, why not make it work for you? Start earning points on rent you've already been paying by going to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. That's joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. Make sure to use our link to show we sent you. Don't wait. Start earning rewards today. More Locked On Bulls coming up next. All right, Bulls fans, we're going to get ready to wrap up the show. But before we do, I want to talk about how the Chicago Bulls can wrap up this month of December. The Bulls right now sit at 4-2 in the month of December so far, right? They have a chance to have a winning record at the end of this month, but how likely is that to happen for this Bulls team? That's the question that we all have to ask ourselves. That's what we got to look at. That's what we're about to look at because, listen, it's tough right now. When you look at this upcoming schedule for the Bulls, on Thursday, we face off against the Boston Celtics. That's in Boston. On Saturday, we face the Boston Celtics at home at the United Center. Then we got a game against the Milwaukee Bucks on Monday. Then December 26th, the day after Christmas, we face the Atlanta Hawks. Shout out to Ayo Dosunmu's son, Trae Young. And then we got Milwaukee and Charlotte. So those 6 games over the month of December are really tough games. Even Atlanta, I know we've really been winning against Atlanta recently, but Atlanta is always a team that can give the Bulls fits. It just is what it is. And that Charlotte win, I don't know if LaMelo Ball is going to be back by then, but if he is, that could be a difficult matchup for the Bulls. But even if we want to say Atlanta, Charlotte, the Bulls can absolutely win those games. You got 4 games, 2 each against Boston and Milwaukee. And that's what you got to look at here. Is can the Bulls realistically finish this month of December with a winning record? And what does that really mean if they do? Nothing. It really means nothing if they do. It means nothing in the world, right? Because there's so much season left. But it would be something that as the calendar turns into 2024, if we can finish the season with a winning record with 6 games left, and we're already 4-2 on the season, right? 4-2 in the month of December. The Bulls just got to win a couple of games. They got to just win a couple of games. Now, they can finish at 500 still. right, this month. And I would even take that as a win, considering how bad this Bulls defense still is. We gave up 121 points to the to the Toronto Raptors. We gave up 95 points to the Charlotte Hornets that with LaMelo Ball only averaged 107 points, right? And he's scoring almost 30 points per game. We only gave them 12 points below their season average. So with the Bulls defense, like anything is possible. But I would say this for some pride, right? And for the Bulls to ride this momentum, we still don't know what's going on with Josh getting his injury quite yet. But to ride off that momentum, I would really love to see the Chicago Bulls finish this month strong. And if they can, be great. It would be really great to see that done. Can they do it? Will they do it? We'll see. Let me know your guys' thoughts down below. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you're following us at Locked On Bulls. You can follow me personally at CEO Haize. Locked On Bulls is free and available on every podcasting app and platform of your choice, as well as YouTube, the Odyssey app, Amazon Fire TV. Basically, anywhere you want to get Locked On Bulls, we're free and available. We're also part of the Locked On Podcast Network, with your team every single day. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Love you guys. Go Bulls. See red, y'all. Peace. And that was the wrong one. Peace, y'all.